Hello, I'm Lisa Soto. I am a partner with the law firm of Hunt and Andrews Kurth, and I run the cybersecurity and privacy practice for the firm. I am delighted to speak with you today about data privacy and security in the metaverse. The metaverse promises to augment and to digitally disrupt a broad range of business sectors like retail, like gaming, media, the financial services sector, and many others, of course. We're seeing virtual commerce and retail experiences in the metaverse, discussion about using the metaverse to enhance remote working and virtual events in the metaverse, and a whole new approach to gaming in the metaverse. And of course, data is the fuel that powers this new opportunity. And when you really think about it, the metaverse is a virtual environment driven completely by the collection and use of data. With this opportunity and using this data comes increasing concern about data privacy and security issues. So, to succeed in the metaverse, businesses will need to consider how they will collect, use, and manage data as they enter this uncharted territory. So, today, there are no metaverse specific laws globally. You might consider the metaverse a virtual lawless environment, but at the same time, we need to consider and remember that many countries are currently drafting laws that govern the development of AI, which underpins the metaverse. So, for example, we are seeing in the EU the finalization of the EU AI Act. Canada has a bill on the table, and Brazil's AI bills are moving through Parliament. And I'll just also note that China passed already AI rules earlier this year. And we even saw a proposal in the US for the US AI Act that was largely based off of the EU AI Act. So there's been an increased focus on regulating AI in the US over the past year. And I'll just note in particular, what we saw was the blueprint for an AI Bill of Rights. This was a White House issuance. NIST, the National Institute for Standards and Technology, pushed out its AI risk management framework. And there are others that are making their way through the legislative framework. And also, I'll note that just in the last week or so, a couple of weeks, the Biden administration issued an executive order on safe, secure, and trustworthy AI. And that is a really significant development that we're going to watch over the next months and years. So while various AI rules are making their way through the legislative process, we can't really stress enough that existing privacy laws are applicable now in the metaverse. And as an example, we see that Section 5 of the Federal Trade Commission Act applies. This prohibits unfair or deceptive trade practices. This law can and will be applied in the metaverse. There are also 13 comprehensive state privacy laws that will apply in the metaverse as well. These laws generally provide individuals with privacy rights, like the right to access your data, the right to correct inaccurate data, and the right to delete data that an entity holds about you. And we also have a very, very extensive framework in Europe in the General Data Protection Regulation. And that law has been mimicked around the world. So that very extensive regime is in place in many, many countries. And there is no question that that applies in the metaverse as well. So just because a company is operating in the metaverse, which doesn't have sort of a specific legal regime applicable to it, does not mean that it can process data without complying with existing privacy rules. I also just want to note one more set of laws that I think is really very applicable in the metaverse, and that is 3 key biometrics laws in the United States, in Illinois, in Texas, and in Washington. And certainly these laws apply in the metaverse as well. So one of the key challenges of the metaverse is the mass scale collection and processing of sensitive personal information, and this includes biometric data. So it's not surprising, of course, that the metaverse is an environment that's predicated on the use of physiological data. It's not surprising that we see biometric data sort of at the fore. Um, there's one particular study that I think is fascinating, that just 3 data points are needed to uniquely identify an individual in the metaverse: the motion of the user's head and the motion of each hand. And researchers found that a user can be uniquely identified among a pool of over 50,000 people with 94% accuracy from just 100 seconds of motion data. So very, very short amount of data, small amount of data can get you to 94% accuracy. Another challenge is that there's a lack of clarity as to which data protection laws apply in this borderless virtual world. So, for example, if a California resident meets an EU resident in the metaverse, and let's presume this virtual space that they meet in is managed by a multinational corporation, does the California Consumer Privacy Act apply? Does the EU GDPR apply? We're not sure. We don't know yet. This is something yet to be determined. To safeguard privacy in the metaverse, companies first need to adopt protections before entering the metaverse. And this includes considering data privacy at the design stage and through the development of the metaverse product and service offerings, and also necessitates creating an inventory of information assets and preparing data flow maps so that you understand the life cycle of data generated in the metaverse. Second, companies should consider conducting privacy impact assessments to assess and mitigate data risks in the metaverse. For example, you'd want to consider the volume of data that you're collecting, the purpose of the collection, the source of the data, from whom will the data be collected, with whom will it be shared, and what information can be inferred from the data that you collect, and how is that inferred data used. So those are the sorts of questions that we would ask in a privacy impact assessment involving the metaverse. Third, companies must ensure transparency. And what this means is providing appropriate notice about the business's data practices in the metaverse. And this is a little tricky because we need to consider the method of delivery. Do we have a pop-up the way we see on some websites? How do we ensure just-in-time delivery of notices as users start to interact in real time in this virtual environment? And fourth, companies should build privacy frameworks that adhere to what are now well-established global principles to govern data practices in the metaverse. And this framework really needs to include these generally accepted privacy principles of notice, choice of individual rights, and security, and there are some others as well. But these are the mainstays of all comprehensive data protection laws globally. So the other side of the metaverse coin is data security. So if data is not properly managed from a security perspective, we could see the metaverse quickly turn into a hacker's playground. So every company needs to focus on secure software development. This includes secure coding, rigorous software testing, and appropriate account security features. This, of course, goes well beyond the virtual world, but certainly we need to consider the same principles, similar principles, maybe enhanced in the metaverse. So companies also should consider the use of technologies that mitigate anticipated risks in the metaverse, such as the use of blockchain, which can help to prevent digital property theft. And also now, certainly the use of AI technology to detect and prevent fraud. Companies need to think about adapting their existing incident response plans. Many companies have incident response plans. These now need to be adapted to the metaverse to anticipate the new challenges and the new threats that will be shown to us in the metaverse. And it's not enough just to adapt your incident response plan, but you need to test it as well. So companies often will test their incident response plans through tabletop exercises and other cyber readiness exercises. Of course, whatever you do outside the metaverse should also be done with respect to your interaction with the metaverse. So key questions that you would consider in a tabletop exercise are: which laws apply? How will you assess any cybersecurity risks that your entity is facing? How will notice be provided to users? For example, if there's a data breach in the United States, there are 54 data breach notification laws at the state level, 50 states plus Guam, U.S. Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, and D.C., okay, jurisdiction level, not exactly state. And we need to comply with those. Doesn't matter that we're operating in the metaverse, we need to comply with those laws. And we also need to think about which regulators would need to be notified as well, should there be a cybersecurity incident. So what does the future hold for the metaverse from a privacy and security perspective? So metaverse-specific requirements are very likely to be coming down the pike. Lawmakers and regulators are starting to discuss various regulatory frameworks for the responsible development of the metaverse. For example, the EU Commission, the Telecom Regulatory Authority of India, and China's Ministry of Industry and Information Technology are very much along the path, very well along the way of considering metaverse-specific rules. So there's nothing concrete yet, but this certainly signals that the metaverse is making its way onto legislative and regulatory agendas. From a technical perspective, standards for the metaverse are being developed. For example, the International Telecoms Union, which is the UN's telecom agency that sets global rules for technologies, has established an expert focus group to work toward international technical standards for the metaverse. And one of the goals of this expert group is to develop a roadmap for protecting personal data in the metaverse, exactly what we're talking about during this session. We are also seeing proactive efforts from industry to address metaverse-related risks. For example, a consortium of organizations has come together to set up the Metaverse Standards Forum. And this forum has put together several exploratory groups, including one dedicated to privacy, cybersecurity, and identity. So I think it is inevitable that we will see regulatory guidance on the application of existing privacy laws in the metaverse, as we discussed, as more companies enter this virtual land of opportunity. And we will see additional new laws and rules that are pushed out to regulate the metaverse. We've seen increasing focus by the FTC, Federal Trade Commission in the United States, by regulators in Europe and Asia on AI issues. And there's no doubt that metaverse guidance will be the natural extension of this work for regulators. So I will stop here and thank you for joining this session, and I'm happy to take questions.